Okay, so we're ready to start. As I just said, this webinar will be recorded and the video will be available on the graduate school website. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar series. I am Paola Gamboa, Education and Digital Manager of the Graduate School One Health Emerging Infectious Diseases. I would like to take this opportunity to wish you all a prosperous and successful 2026. Thank you for joining us for this new session on our series, One Health Research in French Amazonia. We are very happy to have you here with us today and glad to know you are joining us from Korea, Belgium, Italy, Switzerland, French Guiana, or mainland France. I am pleased to introduce our chair for this session, Professor Loïc Eppelboin, our expert in infectiology and epidemiology of tropical and infectious diseases. He is a full professor and hospital practitioner in the Infectious and Tropical Diseases Unit at Cayenne Hospital, Saint-André Rosemont in French Guiana. Today, we are particularly honored to welcome Professor Benoit De Thoisy. On February 24, we will welcome Professor Loïc Eppelboin. On March 18, Professor Jean-Bernard Duchemin. On April 22nd, Professor Guillaume Audon. On May 18, Professor Antoine Adeny. And remember that all our sessions take place at 12:30 p.m. Paris local time. A few practical notes before we begin. Our 40 minutes presentation will take place in English, but remember, you can ask your questions in French or in English. We count on your active participation and rich exchange of ideas anytime during the chat or during the discussion period. Well, without further delay, I want you to enjoy the session, and Professor Eppelboin, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, and I wish you first a very happy new year and many good things for this new year 2026 coming, with hopes of something changing in politics all over the world, something more positive. And our webinar, our program is something very warm, is very hot in the actuality, and we are talking about One Health, we're talking about ecology, we're talking about climate change, and there is something just in the actuality very interesting. And I'm very pleased today to introduce Dr. Benoit De Thoisy, which has been working for more or less 20 years in the French Amazonia, with one of the first scientists working on One Health research, and he's been working on many subjects at the interface of between health, animals, environment. And today he will talk to you about his research, local, regional, and international research on rabies in French Guiana, from the virome to the social behavior of vampires, which is a vampire batch, which is Desmodus rotundus. Dr. Benoit De Thoisy is one of the most productive scientists in French Guiana, with many publications on One Health subject. So the rain has started behind me, so I will let the mic to Benoit. Benoit, thanks so much to be here today, and the talk is yours.
Thanks, Loïc, for the introduction. Thanks for inviting me for this meeting, for this session, and thanks to for the organization. Indeed, as sorry. You have my screen, it's okay? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so as Loïc introduced, I'm going to talk about the issue of rabies, but as he said, we are working since many years on the topic and try to consider the disease in a very, very global approach. So I'm not going to give any very detailed information about clinical immunology, ecology, but I'm going to try to make a very wide view of the disease, since we are exploring all those compartments of the cycles, all those components of the cycles, and I will try to give an overview of the work, the knowledge, the required issues about this disease, and how it can be an example of the need for a very, very global approach. So this is why I try in my title to give a really very wide scope, from forests to bats in general, to vampire in particular, and to the rabies being both the disease and the viruses. So first, I guess you all know this, but rabies is a viral zoonosis still responsible of many years, or many deaths every year. And in the world, the dog is definitively the main vectors of the disease. One word very quickly about the viruses. It belongs to the Rhabdoviridae family, the genus Lysavirus, and it is occurring hosting by most of mammals. And transmission between hosts is done mainly, I say mainly, by saliva. And saliva is then the drivers of the virus between animals, and obviously from animals, from mammal reservoir to man for transmission of the disease. South America is quite different on the epidemiologic situations, different compared to the rest of the world, since bats and notably the vampire is the main the main reservoir of the disease. So our situation here in Amazonia is quite different than the situation in the what is called the old world. The rabies has definitively lots of issues to manage. I'm not going to talk too much about first the economic damage. Economic damage are very, very important. It has been controlled since some years by most of the South American countries, but used to be and still is in some country a very, very important damage, since without vaccination of the cattle, the death is 100% occurrence probability to occur as soon as the animals are contaminated. And we could talk a little bit later if you want, but definitively it has been shown by many, many studies in Brazil, in Peru, that definitively vaccination is expensive, but approximately 10% only of the cost of unvaccinated cattle. The economic loss is really, really very important, and vaccination is needed and economically viable. Anyway, this is not exactly the topic of my talk today, but I'm going more to talk about obviously health issues, since yes, we are also interested by people health and not only cattle health. I will try to show a little bit how mainly this will be the key of my presentation, to try to show you in few minutes how the disease of the rabies can be a very good example of the need for a very wide integrative approach between host, disease, and environment. And I will finish by some very few consideration about risk management. So the first point is about the viruses. About the vampire. In the map on the left, you have all the occurrence of the vampire, on the current occurrence of the vampire, and it is shown since more than 1 century that we observe an expansion of the distribution of the species. According to the figure above definitely shows that there is an expanding to the north, and also with the upper figure shows that there is also an expanding according to temperature and an increased tolerance of the vampire to temperature change. So definitively this will be back on this first very important issue, because we have very good evidence that the host expansions occur in reply, but not only to climate change. This recent work shows that in yellow, what will be the most favorable geographic areas for the distribution of the vampire. And the purple shows habitats that are less favorable, but where the vampire will still occur. What is interesting to see is that according to the different prediction of climate change, we will have first an expansion of the most favorable area to the north and to the south. But in the very worst or more pessimistic projection of climate change, we see that will appear in the center of the Amazonia areas that will expectedly will not be any more favorable. And this will be because of the increase of the temperature, and vampire as bats are very, very sensible to the hot temperature. And likely in the worst projection of the climatic change, the Amazonia, the center of Amazonia, won't be any more favorable to the vampire. Let's remind that this is a range expansion of the host and not of the disease. We'll be back on the disease later. Oh, this is reflected on attack. I was talking about the vampire, and now we'll have some words about the distribution of the cattle attack. What has been shown is that the likelihood of attack of cattle is driven by the environment and is driven by the closeness to forest. Vampire are a bat that is living in the forest, that needs the forest to roost, and it's not a bat that can live in very, very open areas. And in the left figure, we can see that occurrence of attacks in quite low, almost nil, in cattle living in open areas, and increase as soon as cattle is close to the forest. Now, this is what has been described on ecological drivers of attacks. Now, for people, what is known? We have increasing also attack on people, including in French Guiana and in Brazil, in Peru. This is now common. And what are the main drivers of attack for both cattle and people is two ecological conditions. And indeed, attacks occur mainly in disturbed areas. This is something that is important to notice. Vampire attacks, it's the same with other predators such as the jaguars or pumas and so on. Jaguar attacks definitively occurs as soon as the habitat change. What are the consequences for the predators, for vampire, as soon as habitat change? First is quite obvious, is a forest loss induce movement of population. As I said, vampires need forests to roost, need trees, need resources, and forest clear cut definitively involve movements of populations. And the second point is that before clear forest cut. There is something that we call in ecology defaunation. Defaunation means that the forest is still here, but maybe due to overhunting and so on, the forest is here. I say the trees are still here, but the forest is empty. For some of you that are dealing a little bit with ecology, this is a concept of empty forest. Empty forest means that the structure of the forest is here, but there is no more fauna here. And defaunation definitively needs for vampire and for other species to split their feeding habits, and they can go on cattle, on people, just because they need to feed. Now, on a more wide, I'm going just back quickly on the vampire attack, and now not on a spatial, on ecological point of view, but much more on a temporal point of view. What has been shown is that we observed in all South American and Central American countries a very dramatic increase of vampire attack in cattle and mainly in Brazil. And since some years, it's decreasing a lot because mainly of the very, very important cattle vaccination politics that have been implemented in all South American countries. The yellow curve is a curve of Brazil, and where that shows that we had an expansion, a very dramatic expansion of attack of vampire in cattle until quite a control since some years of this attack, not mainly, but only because most of the breeders understood the importance of the vaccination. Another way to present those curves is the same studies that I presented in the introduction was the disease expansion. I was talking about the attacks, and now I'm making the parallel with disease expansion. And we can show that in the upper figure that the number of disease outbreak, I'm not talking anymore to cattle, attack outbreak, but now disease outbreak, show a very, very important increase, mainly in Peru, Mexico, and Ecuador, that were the main country where most of the disease occur in a very, very high range over the 50 last years. And we also note in the lower figure that not only the disease increase in occurrence, but only increase in expansion. In the first slide, I show you the expansion of the vampire. Now, in the lower figure, I show you the geographic expansion of the disease. Okay, and we see that with time, disease is expanding in the north and in the south. A point that is interesting for us also, is the relationships between the rabies report in cattle and the rabies report in men. And we see, it could sound obvious, but it had not been shown before. And we see that there is obviously a quite clear relationships between the circulations of the viruses in cattle and the circulation of the virus, not the circulation, but the occurrence of cases in humans. Okay. And with Peru being really the worst country where we have most of the disease and most of the occurrence of the disease in cattle and in Peru. And we see that in the left part of the figures, and some countries can successfully a little bit more manage the circulation and of the viruses. So we have very, very important, the message to retain is that we are very, very important of discrepancies between country, definitively depending of two factors, that is management of agriculture practice, the money given by health authorities, either medical health authorities and veterinary health authorities who control. And as soon as those health politics are not sufficient enough in terms of vaccination, definitively the disease exploded, either on people and in cattle. Now let's go back a little bit more closely to where we are working, and so my team and Loic team and so on, and with what happened recently in French Guiana. We had some outbreak in French Guiana that has been explored a little bit, and historically we had in 2008 a very first case in that occurred in Cayenne, very close to the main city here, and this definitively almost now 20 years ago give a very, very important shoot to all the people working on, or expected or wanted to work on the rabies. Before this period, in the early 20s, we had almost nothing done on rabies in French Guiana. And this first human rabies cases really gave a very, very strong dynamics of many not many, we are not so numerous to work on this, but a strong dynamic to the rabies, and definitively put a flagship on the disease. More recently, we had other cases of rabies in humans, of course, concluding with death. It was there not anymore close to the city of Cayenne, but in the south of the country, in an area that was occupied by gold miners, illegal gold miners, and we had an occurrence of vampire attacks, and we have occurrence of cases. We had confirmed 3 cases. Those guy was Brazilian guys working illegally on, as I said, on mining, and we have been there to explore a little bit the conditions of those people to live and the health status of people. The condition, as you can see on the picture, was quite, let's say, interesting, because we were in a illegal camp with many people in a, of course, prohibited area. We were in the center of the national park, and all the epidemiological investigation was done with the support of the army to secure our mission there. And our job were really to understand the relationship that people had with vampire and to explore a little bit more the condition of way of those people. This is really to say that rabies is not, as we thought before the cases in 2008, is not an old disease. Even in French Guiana, the disease still occurs, and the disease still kills in French Guiana, as everywhere. Now, I'm going to show you a more recent study that is a prediction of the more favorable conditions for the disease. And in the first slide, I show you the most favorable condition for the host. And as we can see, it's not exactly the same. Of course, it's not exactly the same map, and it's not exactly the same predictions. The maps of the vampire show some areas that will be favorable, but not favorable for the disease, and notably for all the southern Brazil. Why? because when we are dealing about a disease, we are not only disease about the host, but we are also dealing about the risk of people to be in contact with the host and the risk of people to be contaminated by the viruses. And this comparison between the map is something that is very, very important in epidemiology, is very, very important in a wide approach of disease, is not to confound, and we still have many studies confounding what we call the alia and what we call the risk. The alia is a chance to have the host, is a chance to have the microbe, is a chance to have everywhere, to have the parasites, the virus, doesn't matter. And the risk is a chance to have interaction. So the risk include many, many human behavioral health sanitary compounds that are not included in the chance to have the host. We can have very good ecological conditions and the host is here, but very good sanitary strategy, health conditions, and the risk is very low because the contact between the host and the people is very low. Okay, so this is very important not to make the mix between host and disease. Host is necessary for disease, but disease is something else, needs other compounds that the host only. Okay, disease needs contacts, disease needs susceptibility of people, disease needs many, many other things that host only. Now, going to talk a little bit more about those general introduction and general issues about health, about rabies, and what we are doing more precisely in the lab here in Cayenne at the Institut Pasteur. So we are working, you understood, in Cayenne, in French Guiana, on the Guiana Shield. We made recently a review about the status of the rabies in the Guiana Shield. And in the lab, we have a different approach to work on the disease. First, a very loose presentation. We have in French Guiana, a very small country, we have one of the richest diversities of bats, with more than 100 species different of bats. And those bats can be found in a very, very wide diversity of habitats. We are covered at 90% by Amazonia, but we also have urban area, disturbed areas, some savannas, and we can find bats everywhere. The approach of the lab was really to work on those three compounds: the host, try to work on the host, try to work on the viruses, and on the other compounds, that is environments and habitats, with those interaction between those different compartments. So I will give you some example of what we are doing on those compartments. First, we still spend a lot of time describing host communities and the relationships between this very, very wide diversity of bats and the occurrence of the viruses. We conducted some years ago now a very huge, very large screening, serological screening in many bats, almost 50 bat species. And what we saw is that but all bat species have been in contact with the rabies viruses. Okay, we have serological positive animals in all bat species, not only in sangivorous bats as the vampire, but also in frugivorous bats, in piscivorous bats, in nectarivorous bats. The virus is definitively present in all bat species. Looking a little bit more in detail, the different drivers of this seropositivity, of course, we observe that hematophagous species are more prone to be seropositive than omnivorous, frugivorous, insectivorous, but omnivorous, frugivorous, insectivorous are also positive and are also in contact with the viruses. One point also that was interesting is to show that we have the use of shelters shows that when we explore this monospecific versus multispecific colony, we identify that the fact that the drivers of being in monospecific colony is a positive reply to serology. Serology is a positive reply to monospecific shelters. And also it was interesting to note that animals living in forest areas, whatever the species, are more prone to be positive than animals living in disturbed or open areas. To go a little bit further, was a very wide ecological approach. We are working since many years in the monitoring of some bats colonies. And for this, we are working in caves in different places of French Guiana with different approach. One first approach is to explore in colonies. I'm going now to talk about vampire only. In colonies to see the evolutions of the serological status of the colonies. Okay? So for this, we are going on the field. We just take some blood for vampire, okay, and do the dynamic of the serology in the caves. And we saw that at the colony scales, the serology is not constant. We have some periods with many animals seropositives, and we have other periods where seropositivity declines. Okay, I show you there the results in two different caves. So the serological status being positive or negative is not something constant, even in a colony that is stable. One of the points is that we used to mark animals with a pit tag, and we were able to recapture some animals and to have the dynamic of the serology within animals. In the previous slides, I was at the colony level. Here we are at the individual levels. And we see that with time, we had the opportunity to recapture many animals, and vampire control definitively the infection. We have some animals that we captured negatives. Some months later, they were positives to the rabies infection, and some months later, they come back to negativity. We have a huge number of animals that seroconversed in both directions, from negative to positive. So the virus was introduced in the colony, and then all the colony show a decrease of the serological status, and we capture many animals that became seronegative. So we had two conclusions about this, is that at the individual levels, we have a very quick control of the infection. And the second point is at the colony level, the infection is cyclic and it's not something endemic at the scale of the colony, but kind of epidemic of rabies, quickly controlled by rabies, by a vampire. And then the colony became globally negative. One of the points we are working on is the dispersal of the host. We have in the lab also some work on genetics, and notably population genetics. And this is a work we have done some years ago to compare between the caves and also with many other points that we sampled in other places in French Guiana. we try to explore a little bit the population genetic of the vampire. And what we have shown is, I'm not going to give you too much detail about the studies unless you want some. And obviously, all the papers that I'm citing are available, no problem. But in what is interesting for us when we are dealing about the rabies, just give you one of the key results is that we were able, using different molecular marker, we were able to show that the dispersal of the female is really occur at a very, very small scale. This is not the marking work. This is really the genetic results. Females are dispersing between the groups at a small geographic scale, and males are responsible of dispersal of colony at much wider scales. The dispersal of vampire and then the dispersal of the viruses clearly is sex mediated. We also work not then on the vampire, but on the phylogeography of the viruses at the Amazonian scale. And we show that there is a quite low geographic structure of the viruses. This means that at the scale of Amazonia, there is almost no structure of the viruses in the bats colony. What does it mean? It means that the virus is quite dispersed at very, very large scale. It can mean that it's dispersed by many species. As we have shown with the serology, many species are involved. And the fact that many species are involved, including some species that may travel on long distance, makes that the viruses is circulating at wide scale and has not the evolutionary time to structure. And this is also important to understand that we have a very large distribution of the viruses and a large circulation of the viruses, and we have not quite some ecological niche with one strain or one another strain. It's really a viruses that is circulating widely at the Amazonian scale. One other point is that we wanted to explore a bit the influence of environment, habitats on the virus diversity, and not only on the rabies virus diversity, but also on the all virus community diversity. And for this, we used some metagenomics approach. This has also been published recently. And we explore in bats the diversity of viruses they hosted in forest, in disturbed areas, and in the city. And we show that the viral diversity is much higher in forest areas. And we also identify some viruses that are definitively signature of forest, although some urban areas host some more specific viruses. The last point is that we also observe that the drivers of those diversity are also the diet, the ecology of the species. Definitively, we can see that according to the diet, the viruses community were not the same. And it was also interesting to note that the habitats, and even at a very small scale. On the right part of the figure, I show you the caves where we work when we are still doing our survey, our marking recapture. Those caves dominated by vampire have a very specific signature of overall global diversity. Something happen is this micro habitats of the caves that is not encountered in forest, in deep open forest, or that is not observed in urban areas. So here,
il reste 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Ah non, sérieux? Ouais, ça va aller. Okay. One of the points is, this will be the last point, and we also wanted to explore a little bit more, but at a wider scale, the control of infection by host. As I showed you previously, we had this question of control by serology, but we wanted to go a little bit more deeply in intimate processes. This is a very ongoing project, but we explore the white blood cell profiles at the Amazonia scale. And what we have shown, this is very preliminary. We show that the white blood cell count depends of livestock biomass and also depends of the range. And one very preliminary hypothesis is that in areas where we have lots of livestock, lots of cattle, obviously we have lots more resources available for vampire, but, and this is maybe why the chronic stress is increased, the resources are less diverse and there is an increasing densities of the vampire. This is what is noticed around cattle. And we have to remain that vampire are very territory species with very strong and social structure. And this artificial increase of densities is definitively not an advantage at the long term for the vampire, since we expect that is completely disorganize the structure and induce this chronic stress. So more resources does not mean that population are in better conditions. More resources, yes, but less diverse resources, increased density, that may induce a population stress. And the other point explained by the modification of white blood cell counts is that if we have an increase in the more northern limits or southern limits, and we also suppose that those abiotic conditions, when we are at the species limit, physiological species limit, also induce stress. What we do not know, what we still need to know, is to understand how this chronic stress influences the control of infection. And this is why this is the next step we're working on. So to conclude, we have done since some years some progresses, and about message to take home is that the rabies cycles relies not only on the host, on the Desmodus rotundus, but relies on a wide range community of species. The social structure influences the dynamics. This is what we have shown with the caves. One other point is that in disturbed habitats, healthy population that we add in the caves, we have a quick control of infection. But as we have shown with the white blood cell profiles, we also show that population may be stressed in very specific disturbed conditions, and this may change the capability of the species to control the infection. What remains open is to explore a little bit the habitat change and the stress, to explore a little bit how the stress influence the control, and the huge question of the risk management. I will just finish on those two. About the risk management, some recommendations have been done already, notably exploring what are the best of the worst conditions to manage cattle in Amazonia. We have highest bite risk zones that have been shown, and we could drive some or propose some procedure to limit this interaction. This begin to exist. And one other point is the role of local population to prevent rabies. This is another part of the work. Some conditions, as I said, some condition of attack, some condition of contacts can result from individual behavior, can result of also small scale management of habitats around communities. And this is the scope of the project, of a new project that is called Mosaic. This is managed by an Institute for Research and Development by VRD. And this project not only deal with rabies, but deal with many diseases in Amazonia, and expected to involve local people for the prevention of disease, trying to give good recommendation to limit the interaction, to limit the contact, and then to limit the risk. Thank you. On time, Loic? Almost.
This is perfect. Well, I'm from French Guiana, so for me it's on time. From someone like Paola, which is in Paris, maybe got a few minutes late. Are there any questions? As Paola told me that almost 100 persons have been connected during this talk, so maybe you've got some from, and just to show it, like people from Japan, China, Bangladesh, Ivory Coast, even Marseille, just imagine, Morocco. Any question?
Just this last picture is not in French Guiana, but it's in the front of the Amazon, close to Manaus, just to give the detail.
But we've got that kind of construction and building in French Guiana. I just come from Maroni River, and there are some constructions, wood constructions, similar to this one
On the other side.
Yeah. Any question?
Anyway, you have my sorry.
There are many comments on the chat.
Yeah.
Without questions, but saying thank you so much, Benoit, for the presentation, for the talk. And there is one question, I think. Emmanuel?
Emmanuel, n'hésitez pas, s'il vous plaît, à ouvrir la caméra et à échanger avec nous ouvertement. Super, merci.
Okay, thank you for your talk. Maybe just Emmanuel from France, and Seth. Just a question regarding the evolution of seroprevalences. You said it was not stable. Do you find a link with population, the biological cycle of Desmodus or whatever?
No. What we observe is that the thing that was quite strange is that the two caves are not very far, one from one to the other one, less than 10 kilometers from one to the other one, and the cycle was not the same. And well, yes, it was the same, exactly the same dynamics, but not at the same time. And the arrival of the viruses in the second colony was a little bit delayed from almost 6 months. And this is, at the moment, the only difference that we have seen between caves. And within the colony, we did not observe anything regarding death, regarding reproductions. The colony definitively sounds to live very normally, without any clinical impact, at least detectable. So no, the viruses just arrived in the colony, was managed by the colony, and then all the colony became seronegative, and continues to make a life normally.
Okay, thank you.
There is a question in the chat by Pahao Ched. Thank you for the presentation. One question regarding the rapid negativation of the serology at the individual level. How do you explain it?
Good question. Good question. Indeed, we have two. We cannot explain. The point is that there is on a physiological or immunological reply, we have two options. The first option is that the host could definitively control the viruses, and so the virus is not anymore present in the host, a first point. Or one of the options is that the virus can escape to the serology and to the immune system, and why not to escape to the brain. But we did not, as I said, we did not observe any behavioral modification in seropositive animals. It's important to note that I didn't say this, but together with serological status, we have also done molecular survey of the vampire and all on the bats. And so far, we tested more or less 3,000 bats for on a molecular point of view, and we got only one vampire that was positive. It was positive in saliva, and it was an animal that we killed. It was positive in saliva, in circulating blood, and in brain. And this means only 1 on 300 tested. This means that likely the bats have this ability to clear completely the viruses, and the presence of the virus within bats and at least within vampire should be very short. In all those animals that we tested on the serology, we also obviously had done molecular screening, and in the caves we never detected the viruses in circulation in the blood, and we were in the cave very, very often. What has been shown experimentally is that viremia is very short, maybe 1 or 2 days, and then the vampire can clear the viruses. We have many hypotheses about this. It's maybe 1 day symposia to develop those hypotheses. We have some hypotheses about on some physiological hypotheses, but I don't know if I have time to develop this, or I can send you some information about this. There is some hypothesis, but quite that still remain very, very speculative. Michel, almost 0. At least we have never seen some died animals from rabies, and the single animals that we detected with that was really full of viruses in the brain, in the saliva, in the blood, was apparently in perfect health.
Ok, merci Benoît et bonjour de 7 et bravo pour cette présentation.
Merci à toi.
There is another question from Morocco. Given the challenges of managing bat-transmitted rabies in remote Amazonian communities with limited access to healthcare, what has been
this is for you.
What has been your experience with pre-exposure prophylaxis strategies in these high-risk populations?
Je te laisse répondre. This is challenging.
This is challenging because, like, I think, Benoit, you know very much better than me what's happening in other countries. I know about French Guiana, but really less in remote areas in Peru or in Brazil, for example. What I know, in French Guiana, we had some villages with gathered attacks during like several weeks, and then it stopped, and without any rabies transmission. So it never led to pre-exposure prophylaxis mission or anything. I don't know what the behavior of the health authorities in other countries such as Peru or Brazil. Do they make vaccination, immunization in remote villages, in autochthonous villages? I don't know.
Yes, a lot. And yes, they're vaccinating a lot. And the question, I think that we do not have time to open this question. This question was posed after some attacks in some Amerindian villages in a remote area in 2008 or 10, I don't remember. C'était quand les attaques à Talouenne? And the
Ouais,
question was,
c'était par là.
the question was that those people were not vaccinated, and we had many discussions with health authorities about the useful to know if it was useful to vaccinate them. And the question came back last year about after the death of those three gold miners, and to know if we vaccinated the rest of the colony, sorry, of the community. And
That's the kind of colonization.
yes, yes, it's not a colony of gold miners; it's a colony of vampire and a group of gold miners. Sorry, and but the health authority decided not to vaccinate people, but many other issues, other than health issues, were considered, because there were illegal people, and it's really, this was an example of how health issue can be confronted to other issues at health, and notably their political. Yes, political, immigration, management of immigration, and how else can serve or deserve some political or some immigratory policies. Il y avait une autre question sur les chiens. Sorry.
We have Mrs. or Mr. or Mrs. Tordo raising his or her hand before the question that were posted in the chat.
Alors attends, là on en est où? Si on descend, il y a une question sur les chiens, sur l'English.
Oui, mais il y avait quelqu'un qui avait levé la main qui s'appelait Tordo. Someone
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Ouais, je t'écoute. Du coup, je réponds aux questions qui sont dans le chat.
Ok.
Il y en a beaucoup là. Pourcentage d'individus qui meurent, c'est bon. Toc, 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 voilà. La question des chiens. English, sorry, Emily. So far, we have some cases of dogs, but quite well managed. And it has to be noticed that all the cases of dogs, as soon as we have sequences of all of them, are induced by bats strains. So far, we do not have in South Amazonia, and in Amazonia, just feel free to correct me if I say something wrong, but all the strains are from vampire. So we have some carnivore. The case from 2008 was induced by a cat, not by a dog, but it was a vampire strain. So the vaccination of cats and dogs are mandatory in French Guiana. But except for the cat in 2008, we do not have cases of rabies that are responsible by domestical animals. But anyway, those domestical animals, when they have cases, they hosted a vampire strain. So this means that they have been bitten by a vampire. Mais c'est surveillé, oui.
Okay, so there is a hand, Gijoho Agbla. Can you turn on your camera?
Okay. This is Noel who is taking another.
Là, j'entends pas très bien.
Computer because mine, my Macintosh is not working. Benoit, I was trying to. Can you hear me?
Oui, c'est bon. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Plus trop là.
I left most of your speech. Sorry for that. But I pick one point just where vampire bats are in good health. They are clearing the virus rapidly. And if I'm trying to put that in other stories that we have done with rodents in the north of France, and indeed what we remark is that when the rodents were in harsh condition, in difficult conditions, they were usually dying from or disappearing, maybe for antiviruses, maybe for something else. We do not know. But this was accompanied by a recolonization of the place where the vampire were. And so with the disappearance, you have a sort of increasing of diversity in terms of viruses. So have you observed in the places where the bats are in bad conditions, a sort of evolution of the vampire strain?
No, we have not been exploring.
Not at all.
I don't know if I'm not sure that we have data to do this, but we can discuss a little bit further if you want, but not now. But yes, maybe we can discuss about this point, but we have not the data to do this. I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much.
There is another hand. Youssef Karaki.
Oui, est-ce que vous préférez de poser la question en français ou bien en anglais?
Bah, c'est bon pour moi, enfin, comme vous voulez.
Okay, so
Vous pouvez mettre votre caméra, s'il vous plaît?
c'est pas ouvert. Ok, je sais pas. Non, ça marche pas.
Ok.
C'est pas grave.
Benoît, éventuellement, est-ce que tu pourras traduire la question avant d'y répondre pour que les anglophones puissent comprendre?
No, fine. I'll ask it in English. So basically, just wanted to ask generally, like coming from the public health point of view, that we're talking about the population of bats in French Guiana. What is the one health message that we're going to give to the population there when it comes to the prevention and community safety? This is one of the main things that I was thinking of during the presentation.
Du coup, j'ai pas exactement compris la question en fait.
C'est plutôt relié aux santé publique pour les habitants de Guyane. Et car on a parlé des chauves-souris et aussi le risque de rabies. Mais d'un côté de santé publique, c'est quoi les measures et c'est quoi le message principal relié au One Health?
Okay, the message given to local
To
to
the
community to prevent.
Oui, c'est ça.
Okay. So far with the Mosaic project, we are at the beginning of the project, and we are working mainly on the frontier, at the Oyapock frontier, and trying first to understand what is understood by people about rabies and how they what do they know about the viruses. What we have shown in the different attacks that we have recorded in French Guiana is that it sounds to be attacks are mainly linked, including in small villages, to destruction of some shelters and to very quick and rapid forest change around the villages. It was a case in a place close to Cayenne where I was some years ago with Loic, and it was also the place in the Maroni River some 15 years ago. And attack follows very, very quick and important deforestation just very close to the village. And likely we had disturbance of the colony, maybe that was nesting in a dead tree or something like this. And we had this attack. The main drivers of the attack that so far we identified, as I said in the presentation, is direct forest loss, but it can be direct forest disturbance. What we had in Talwen in this village on the Maroni River was definitively that we cut a very small piece of the forest, but likely where we had a colony roosting, and the colony lost the roost and then attacked the villages. And where we were closer to Cayenne, where we have been with Loic some years ago, it was also clear cutting of the forest. And another point is a question of defaunation. what is not clearly known is that human attack is not the first prey for the vampire. As soon as they can find a diet and resources in the forest, they do not attack. And the management of the forest is not only the management of the cutting of the forest, but also a very much more wide. We are doing more and more the parallel with jaguar attack and puma attacks. As soon as those predators have something to eat in the forest, they won't go out. So the question is really also to a global manage of hunting, global manage of the forest, and it's a very, very global manage of all the forest ecosystems that will likely limit the attack.
Merci beaucoup.
I think that the time is over. I don't know if there are some questions left, unanswered question.
Il y avait quelque chose sur un isolat du virus en Amazonie chez les patients mordus en provenance. Alors, ça, je réponds à Samsung SM 0155F. Yes, for the people from the gold miners, we have sequenced the strains, and it was very, very close. It was not specific, or it was very close to the strains that we have previously identified in French Guiana for the three gold miners. And anything else?
Maybe I can just complete what you said about the previous question about from Youssef Karaki. At the individual levels, and even in autochthonous population, but even in tourist people going to the forest to spend a weekend, etc., and even to the gold miners, I think that the key of the protection against rabies and the bad bites are the mosquito net. This is the key to avoid the bites of the bats. I think even that the protection from the mosquito net is more to protect against bats than against mosquitoes when you sleep in the forest. That is the main message. We had regularly cases of bat bites in touristic camps on certain touristic camp especially on Conte River, but also Apruag River. So the message is to sleep with a mosquito net, but maybe sometimes touristic operators, they don't want to talk about this phenomenon, and they don't say to the tourists that they have to sleep with a mosquito net, and people are bitten. So that's one of the public health message to a specific population, which is mosquito nets are mandatory to sleep in the forest.
Well, I think this is all we have to cover today, but just for today. Thank you again, Professor De Thoisy, for this amazing presentation. Thank you, Loic, for bringing us such as interesting presenters. And thank you all for your participation. So don't forget that we will have our next session on February the 24th. We will have Professor Loic Epelwan. Thank you very much for attending this webinar.
Thank you so much. Thanks to you all from everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah. Thanks to all of you.
Merci
Ciao, Loic.
beaucoup à tous. Bonne journée.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Merci.
Thanks very much.